The second the front door closed behind them, everything I thought I knew about my family collapsed in on itself like a house with no foundation. My brother and his wife had just walked out to the waiting car, luggage already loaded, weekend bags zipped, smiles on their faces. Nashville to Charleston for a long weekend, 5 days, a second honeymoon they'd been planning since January. And they'd asked me to stay with Owen. Of course they had. I was the responsible one, the one who always said yes. I turned around with a smile already forming on my lips, ready to ask my nephew what he wanted for dinner. Pizza, probably. It was always pizza with 9-year-olds. But Owen wasn't standing in the living room staring at his tablet the way he always did. He was standing right behind me, maybe 3 feet away, looking up at me with an expression I had never seen on his face in all 9 years of his life. Still, focused, like he'd been waiting a very long time for this exact moment. And then my nephew, the boy his parents had spent 4 years telling every teacher, every doctor, and every family member could not speak to strangers. The child who had allegedly stopped communicating with anyone outside his household due to a severe anxiety-based speech disorder opened his mouth. "Aunt Sarah," he said. His voice was clear and steady. "Don't drink the green smoothie Mom put in the fridge. She put something in it." My hand was still on the doorknob, cold metal against my palm. The sound of the car pulling away from the curb bled through the walls. Let me go back about 8 hours, because for this to make any sense, you need to understand how I got here and why it took me this long to see what was right in front of me. My name is Sarah Calloway. I'm 28 years old. I'm a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Nashville, Tennessee, which sounds boring because it is, but I'm good at it. Numbers are honest. They don't perform. They don't put on a face for the holidays and then say something sharp when no one else is listening. I've always found comfort in things that are exactly what they appear to be. My brother Ryan is 34, 6 years between us. Growing up, he was the golden one, the athlete, the charmer, the kid who walked into every room and immediately owned it. I was the one in the corner reading. We loved each other, but we were never the same kind of people. And by the time he married Nicole 8 years ago, we had quietly drifted into the kind of siblings who texted on birthdays and saw each other at Thanksgiving. Nicole. I need to talk about Nicole carefully, because the truth is, I don't think I ever liked her, and for a long time, I told myself that was my problem. She was beautiful in the kind of way that made you aware of it constantly. Precise. Everything in her life was arranged, her home, her appearance, her stories about herself. Ryan adored her. My mother thought she was wonderful. My grandmother, Nana Ruth, was the only one who ever said anything different, and even she only said it once, quietly, while we were doing dishes together after Christmas dinner 3 years ago. "That woman keeps score," Nana Ruth said. Be careful around people who keep score. I didn't understand what she meant then. Owen was born 5 years into their marriage, and from the beginning he was a quiet kid. Not unfriendly, just careful. He watched things. He had my brother's dark eyes and his own particular way of tilting his head slightly when he was listening hard, like he was taking notes. I loved him instinctively and completely, the way you sometimes love someone before you can explain why. Then, about 4 years ago, Nicole started telling people that Owen had developed a speech disorder. Anxiety-based, she explained. Selective. He could speak at home, within the family unit, but around extended family, teachers, strangers, he shut down completely. Couldn't form words. The stress was too great. She took him to 2 specialists and came back with documentation and a diagnosis. And after that, whenever Owen was quiet at family gatherings, which was always, everyone nodded with understanding, and Nicole received the particular kind of sympathy reserved for mothers of children with invisible challenges. I visited maybe once every 6 or 7 weeks. I brought Owen books, the thick, illustrated kind about space and ocean creatures and ancient civilizations. He couldn't talk to me, so we communicated through nods and pointing and the occasional written note. I read to him sometimes. He would sit beside me on the couch and lean his shoulder against mine, and even without words there was something real between us, something I couldn't name. I should have questioned things sooner. Looking back, there were signs I smoothed over because Nicole was my brother's wife, and Ryan was happy, and I didn't want to be the difficult one, the one with the problem. But I didn't question anything, not until this morning when Ryan called me at 7 a.m. and asked if I could come stay with Owen for 5 days while they went to Charleston. Of course, I said. Because I always said of course. I drove over mid-morning. Their house was large and immaculate, the kind of home that looked like it existed primarily to be photographed. Nicole greeted me at the door with a hug that lasted exactly 1 second too long, like she was performing warmth rather than feeling it. Ryan was already loading bags into the car, moving fast, not quite meeting my eyes. He seemed wound tight, distracted. He waved at me from the driveway, called out, "You're the best, sis," and went back to the bags. Nicole walked me through the house with the efficiency of a flight attendant demonstrating emergency procedures. Owen's schedule, Owen's medications, Owen's school pickup time. And then she opened the refrigerator and pulled out a large mason jar with a green lid. "This is for you," she said, pressing it into my hands with both of hers. "It's a wellness smoothie. Spirulina, ginger, adaptogens. You mentioned stress a few weeks ago, and I've been making this batch for you. For your nerves, drink it tonight. You'll sleep like a rock." Something about the way she said it sat wrong in my chest. Too deliberate, too warm. Nicole didn't make things for people. Nicole received things from people. But I thanked her because I was standing in her kitchen holding a mason jar, and it didn't seem like the moment for suspicion. The car honked. Nicole hugged me again, that same precise 1 second hug, and walked out. Ryan gave me a thumbs up from the passenger seat. I watched the car reverse down the driveway and pull into the street. I turned around. Owen was standing 3 feet behind me, looking at me like he'd been waiting his whole life to be alone with me. And then he told me not to drink the smoothie. I set the jar down on the counter so carefully you would have thought it was nitroglycerin. My hands had gone completely steady in the way hands sometimes do when your brain shifts into a different gear entirely. I crouched down to Owen's eye level. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. "Owen," I said quietly, "you can talk to me." "I always could," he said. The room tilted. I sat down on the kitchen floor without deciding to. "What do you mean you always could?" And that's when my 9-year-old nephew sat down on the floor across from me, crossed his legs, folded his hands in his lap with a seriousness that belonged on someone 3 times his age, and told me the truth. Owen wasn't born with a speech disorder. He didn't have selective mutism, anxiety-based or otherwise. He had been a normal, talkative child who asked relentless questions and narrated his own activities out loud and sang made-up songs about his breakfast. He remembered being that kid. He told me he missed being that kid. It had changed when he was 5. He'd been playing in the upstairs hallway one afternoon when he heard his mother's voice from the study below, louder than she usually allowed herself to be. He'd crept to the top of the stairs the way children do, quiet as smoke, invisible the way small children can be when adults forget they exist. He didn't understand everything he heard, but he understood enough. His mother was on the phone. She was saying Aunt Sarah's name. She was saying the words "the property" and "before she figures it out and she's too naive to ask the right questions." She was laughing in a way that didn't sound like laughing. Owen came downstairs after the call ended and asked his mother what naive meant. Nicole's face had gone very still. She'd sent him to his room, and 20 minutes later she'd come in and sat on the edge of his bed, and what she said to him, in a voice that was quiet and careful and more frightening than shouting, was this: "If you ever talk to Aunt Sarah about anything you hear in this house, she's going to get in trouble. Serious trouble. You understand? The kind of trouble that means she goes away and you never see her again. Your voice is a problem for her. Every time you talk to her, it gets worse. If you love your aunt, you'll stay quiet." Owen was 5 years old. He loved me. I was the aunt who brought him books about dinosaurs and sat on the floor and drew with him and never once made him feel like a problem to be managed. So he stopped talking, not to everyone. He still spoke at home, to his parents, in private, but anywhere I might hear, any family gathering, any visit, any moment when the information might travel back to me, silence. Nicole built the whole architecture around it. The specialists, the documentation, the diagnosis. She told everyone. She made it official. And once it was official, no one looked too hard at it. I sat on that kitchen floor for a long time after he finished. I felt a kind of cold clarity settle into my chest, the same feeling I get when I find a discrepancy in a balance sheet, when the numbers finally tell me exactly what's wrong. "What else do you know?" I asked. Owen knew quite a lot. Being silent made him invisible in the same way it had made the girl in that other story invisible, a story I didn't know yet but would recognize instantly when I finally heard it. Adults forgot he was there. His mother made phone calls in the same room. His father argued in the hallway. Owen sat in corners and listened the way only a child who has given up on speaking can listen, with every cell of his attention. He knew there was a property. Nana Ruth, my grandmother, had died 14 months ago. She'd owned a house in East Nashville, a craftsman bungalow that had tripled in value over the past decade as the neighborhood transformed. She'd left it to me in her will. Her handwritten note said she'd thought carefully about it, and she knew I'd keep it in the family or put it to good use, and she trusted me to do right by it. I'd been dealing with the estate slowly, the way you deal with things when grief is in the way. I knew the house was mine. I had the will, but I hadn't moved on the title transfer yet. I'd been putting it off. Owen had heard Nicole on the phone twice in the past month. Something about a notary, something about signatures. Something about a buyer in Midtown who was ready to move fast if the paperwork cleared by the end of the month. The house. My house. Nana Ruth's house. Nicole was trying to sell it. "Do you know where Mom keeps her important papers?" I asked. Owen nodded. He stood up without being asked and walked down the hallway to the home office. I followed. The office was neat and styled, the kind of room that signaled seriousness without actually being functional. There was a wooden filing cabinet, a desk with a closed laptop, and on the bottom shelf of the built-in bookcase, pushed behind a row of hardcover books that had clearly never been opened, a small lockbox with a digital keypad. 8, 2, 7, 3, Owen said. "How do you know that?" He looked at me steadily. I watched her. Lots of times. She never checked if I was in the room. A pause. People don't really look at you when you're the quiet kid. I punched in the code. The box opened. What I found inside made the cold thing in my chest drop about 3 feet. First, a property deed transfer form. My name was on it as grantor. Except I hadn't signed it. The signature was close, very close, the kind of close you get after serious practice, but the way I make my capital S was wrong. The angle of the loop at the top, anyone who'd ever watched me sign my name 100 times would see it, which meant Nicole had watched me sign things and practiced until she almost had it. Second, a set of emails printed on regular paper, folded in half, between Nicole and a real estate agent named Todd Paris. Discussing an off-market sale, quick close, the seller's representative handling the paperwork directly due to a family situation. The property address was Nana Ruth's address. The proposed sale price was $420,000. Third, a folder with handwritten notes in Nicole's careful, looping script, dates, and observations. A record of every time I'd mentioned the estate, every time I'd said I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the house, every time I'd been vague about the timeline. Notes that read like a map of my own inattention. She'd been watching me for over a year. She'd been patient. She'd been waiting for me to stay distracted just long enough. Fourth, at the very bottom, a photograph. Nana Ruth and Nicole, Christmas 2 years ago. Nicole had drawn a small star in the corner with a pen. I don't know why. Some people mark their victories like that, small, private tallies that no one else would understand. I took photos of everything with my phone. Every page, every email, every date. Then I called my friend Priya. Priya Menon and I had been friends since college. She'd gone to law school while I went into accounting, and for the past 3 years, she'd been working at a firm that handled estate and property law specifically. If there was anyone in my phone who could tell me what I was holding, it was her. She picked up on the second ring. "Priya," I said, "I need you to listen to me very carefully." She listened. She asked 4 questions. She was quiet for a moment after I finished. "Okay," she said, "here's what you have. You have an attempted fraudulent deed transfer. You have a forged signature on a legal document. If she'd completed this transaction, you'd be looking at felony forgery and real estate fraud. And depending on what's in that smoothie, potentially criminal poisoning." "She needs me incapacitated," I said. She needs me not asking questions for a few days while the sale closes. Exactly. And here's what we're going to do. We're not going to touch that smoothie, we're going to get it tested. I have a contact at Vanderbilt who can fast-track an analysis. And we're going to let Nicole think everything is going exactly according to her plan. You want me to pretend it worked. I want you to be the best actress you've ever been for the next 4 days. Can you do that? I looked at the smoothie sitting on the counter. Green. Innocent looking. Made with love. Yes, I said. Owen was sitting on the living room couch when I came back in. He looked at me with those careful, watchful eyes. Are you going to fix it? He asked. Yes, I said again, and this time I meant both of us. The smoothie analysis came back the next morning. Priya's contact ran it overnight. The results were what I already suspected, and also somehow worse to see written down. A high concentration of a synthetic sedative compound combined with a natural emetic, not enough to cause serious physical harm in a healthy adult. Enough to put someone in bed for 48 to 72 hours, sick and disoriented and entirely out of commission. Exactly long enough for a real estate transaction to close. She wasn't trying to hurt me permanently. She was too careful for that. She just needed me quiet. I called my brother that afternoon. My voice was soft, slightly slurred at the edges. I'd practiced it in the bathroom mirror for 20 minutes. Ryan, I don't feel well. I think I drank something that didn't agree with me. I've been in bed most of the day. Owen's fine. He's been great, actually. I just wanted you to know I'm a little out of it. There was a pause. In that pause, I heard something I hadn't expected. Not concern, not urgency. Something that sounded more like relief. Oh, that's too bad. Nicole's smoothies are so strong sometimes, right? Rest up. You'll feel better tomorrow. He didn't offer to come home. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He said Nicole's smoothies are so strong sometimes, with no weight behind the words at all, like a man repeating a line he'd rehearsed. He knew. I sat with that for a long time. Ryan knew. Maybe not every detail. Maybe not the forged signatures and the printed emails and the lockbox. But he knew Nicole was doing something, and he had decided not to know more than that. That was its own kind of betrayal, slower and quieter than Nicole's, but it was there. Owen watched me from across the room. Did he ask if you were okay? He asked. Not really. He nodded slowly, the way a kid nods when something they suspected turns out to be true. That evening, Priya came over with her associate Daniela, who handled the criminal-adjacent side of real estate fraud, and together we spread everything on the kitchen table. The photos I'd taken from the lockbox, the smoothie analysis, the emails with the notary appointment, which was scheduled for day 3, 2 days away. This is premeditated, Daniela said. This isn't a mistake or an impulse. She set up the buyer, arranged the notary, prepared the incapacitation, all of it coordinated. And the signature is clearly forged, Priya said. She held up the image side by side with a real document bearing my name. Any forensic examiner will see it in 10 seconds. We laid out the plan. Priya would contact the title company directly and flag a hold on any transfer related to the property, which would stall the transaction without alerting Nicole. Daniela would loop in a detective she knew from a previous case, someone who handled property fraud and understood how to set a controlled scene. And on the day of the notary appointment, when Nicole walked in expecting to close a fraudulent sale, there would be people waiting. My job was to be sick. Day 2. I sent Ryan a text. Still pretty rough. Some kind of stomach bug, maybe. Owen is an absolute angel. Don't cut the trip short. I'm fine. His response was a thumbs-up emoji and 3 words. Feel better soon. 3 words. My brother, who I had driven 40 minutes in a snowstorm to help move furniture for when he and Nicole bought their first apartment. 3 words and a thumbs up. I put my phone face down on the counter and went to check on Owen. He was at the kitchen table drawing. He'd pulled out a sketchbook I hadn't seen before, thick with pages, and he was filling one in careful detail. A house. Nana Ruth's house, I realized. The craftsman bungalow I'd seen in photographs, the porch with the 2 wooden chairs, the garden she'd kept in the front. Did you ever go there? I asked. Twice, he said. Before Nana Ruth got sick. She made me hot chocolate and let me pick which mug I used. He didn't look up. She told me you'd take care of it. I sat down across from him. She told you that? He nodded. She said Aunt Sarah knows what things are worth, not just money. Like, what things are actually worth? He paused, pencil moving. I thought about telling you, before now, a lot of times, but I was scared of what would happen to you if I did. You've been protecting me for 4 years, I said. He finally looked up. Someone had to. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand and didn't say anything else, because sometimes there isn't anything else. On the day of the notary appointment, I watched from my car parked 1 block from the title company office. Priya had set up a notification system with the coordinator inside. I would know the moment Nicole walked in. My phone buzzed at 11, 7 inches the morning. She's here. I had asked not to be in the room. I didn't trust myself. Priya was inside as my legal representative. Daniela was inside with the detective, a calm and methodical woman named Detective Reyes, who had handled 12 property fraud cases and looked like she'd seen everything twice. Nicole walked in dressed for a business meeting. Structured blazer, leather portfolio under her arm, the same kind of professional care she brought to everything visible. She gave her name to the front desk. The front desk smiled and directed her to a conference room. She walked in. Priya was at the table. Detective Reyes was at the table. A second officer was standing near the door. The title coordinator was not there. There was no closing to attend. I know the next part from what Priya told me afterward and from the transcript Daniela sent me 3 days later. Nicole's face went very still when she saw the room, but she didn't panic. Nicole never panicked. She recalibrated. She set the portfolio down carefully, took a breath, and said, with perfect composure, I must have the wrong room. I'm here for a property closing. We know, Priya said. That's why we're here. Detective Reyes walked her through it. The forged signature, the fraudulent deed transfer, the smoothie analysis, the real estate emails. All of it laid out clean and flat on the table in front of her, the way you lay cards when you're done pretending the game is still going. Nicole listened. She looked at each document with the controlled expression of someone running rapid calculations. And then she said, My sister-in-law is not mentally well. She's been struggling for years. I was actually trying to help her by managing the property sale on her behalf. She told me to handle it. She had a counter-narrative ready. Of course she did. She'd prepared it the same way she'd prepared everything else. Reyes placed a second document on the table. We have a forensic analysis of the signature. We have records of you purchasing the compounds found in the smoothie 3 weeks ago. We have emails that contain your personal email address discussing this transaction in language that is not consistent with acting on someone's behalf. And we have a witness who overheard conversations in your home related to this property over the course of the past 14 months. Nicole was quiet. What witness? Reyes looked at her for a long moment. Your son. The controlled expression cracked. Not completely. Just enough. He doesn't talk, Nicole said, slowly, like she was reminding herself. He talked to us, Reyes said. Quite a lot, actually. He's very articulate for his age. She paused. Turns out he's been articulate for a while. Something went out of Nicole's face then. Not the composure, exactly. More like the thing underneath the composure, the certainty, the confidence that she had managed every variable and accounted for every possibility. She hadn't accounted for Owen. Ryan cooperated immediately when Reyes reached him. That was the word Priya used, immediately, like he'd been waiting for someone to give him permission. He confirmed what he knew, which was enough. Not everything, but enough to matter. He signed the cooperation agreement his own lawyer handed him the same day. Nicole was arrested on 3 counts, including forgery, fraud, and criminal administration of a controlled substance. She was processed, and she was held. I didn't go to any of those proceedings. I had somewhere more important to be. 2 weeks later, I sat across from a family court judge in a small, practical courtroom with fluorescent lighting and a window that looked out onto a parking garage. Not a grand space. But it felt large to me that morning. Owen sat beside me in a button-down shirt he'd picked himself, navy blue, slightly too big in the shoulders. He'd combed his hair. He was nervous. I could tell from the way he kept rotating his watch around his wrist, but he wasn't silent. He'd been talking all morning, actually. In the car on the way over, he'd explained to me in detail the aerodynamics of commercial aircraft, which he'd been researching on his own because apparently the mechanics of lift fascinated him, and I had learned more about Bernoulli's principle in 20 minutes than I had in all of school. I loved him so much I could barely stand it. The judge reviewed the case file. He asked Owen directly whether he understood what was happening in the courtroom and whether he felt safe. Owen said yes to both with the kind of directness that made the judge glance up from the papers. He asked Owen where he wanted to live. Owen sat up straight. He looked at the judge and then at me and then back at the judge, and he said, "With my Aunt Sarah. She listens, not just when I'm talking. Even before that, when I couldn't, she always listened." He paused. "Also, she doesn't put stuff in smoothies." The court reporter made a small sound. The judge pressed his lips together in a way that suggested he was suppressing something. He signed the papers. We walked out of the courthouse into a clear October afternoon, the kind where the sky is so blue it looks painted, and the trees along the street were turning gold at the edges. Owen walked beside me and didn't say anything for a few steps, just breathed the outside air. Then he said, "Can we get something to eat? I've been thinking about pancakes since yesterday." "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." We went to a diner 4 blocks from the courthouse and ordered the full stack. Owen ate with the focused enthusiasm of a person engaging in a serious project and told me, between bites, about a book he'd been reading about ancient Roman engineering, specifically aqueducts, and how the math involved was actually not that different from modern civil engineering, which he thought was underappreciated as a career choice. I listened. Really listened. The way Nana Ruth had told him I would. The weeks that followed were not simple. Nothing like this ever is. Not once you get past the dramatic part and into the ordinary, difficult work of actually living. Owen started therapy with a specialist in childhood trauma and selective mutism, a gentle and enormously patient man named Dr. Ellison, who told me after their 3rd session that Owen had been holding an enormous amount of fear for an enormous amount of time, and that his mind had developed sophisticated coping mechanisms that were going to take real work to slowly dismantle. Some days, Owen went quiet again. Not performing silence, just retreating, the old instinct still there. On those days, I didn't push. I sat near him. I made tea. I kept reading whatever I was reading and let him know without saying, so that being quiet was fine, that silence here was safe, that he didn't have to earn the right to take up space. Other days, he couldn't stop talking. Those were the best days. The property situation resolved through the estate court. The fraudulent transfer was nullified. The title was confirmed as mine. Nana Ruth's house in East Nashville stood exactly where she'd left it. Front porch, garden, 2 wooden chairs, same as always. I've been going over on weekends to fix it up slowly. Owen comes with me sometimes. He picked out new paint for the porch, a deep sage green that he said looked right with the brickwork, and he was correct. He's been teaching himself about historic architecture from library books and informing me regularly of things I'm doing wrong and right in the renovation. I take notes. I haven't spoken to my brother. Not yet. Maybe not for a while. That particular grief is the slow kind, the kind where you have to be honest with yourself about what you actually lost versus what you thought you had. Ryan called once, left a voicemail that was mostly apology, without ever quite naming what he was apologizing for. I haven't called back. Some things need time. Some things need more than time. What I know for certain is this. Owen deserved a place where his voice was not a threat to someone he loved, where he could talk about aqueducts and aerodynamics and whatever else was living in that extraordinary mind of his and have someone actually there, actually present, taking it in. He has that now. That's what matters. Last Saturday, we had breakfast on the little balcony of my apartment, both of us bundled up against the October chill with blankets over our laps. Owen had recently become interested in birds, specifically migratory patterns, and he was explaining to me why certain species navigate by magnetic fields while others use star positions, and how no one fully understands why different birds evolve different systems, and how the fact that we still don't have a complete answer was his favorite thing about it. I drank my coffee and listened. This is what mornings are supposed to be. Not silence built from fear. Not a child swallowing 4 years of words to keep someone else safe. Just this. October light and birds navigating by stars, and a kid who has so much to say that he barely pauses between sentences. He stopped mid-explanation and looked at me. "You're really listening," he said. "Not just like waiting for me to stop." "I know," I said. "I always will." He looked at me for a moment longer, satisfied by something, and then went back to the birds. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for the one person who will actually hear them. Owen waited 4 years. He stopped waiting the moment he decided I was worth the risk. He found his voice, and somewhere in the silence he'd kept all this time, I found myself.